Mike Buckley, no restrictions for the new year. Many commentators, many virologists and the like, criticising Boris Johnson for that decision here in England because obviously it doesn't match up with what we're seeing in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. What do you think?
Well, not only does it not match up with Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, it doesn't match with pretty much the whole of Europe as well. We are in England going alone on this. So everybody else has watched this variant arrive. They see what's happened to case numbers. They see what's beginning to happen to hospitalizations and deaths. They've seen rising cases among children and rising child hospitalizations, and they're acting accordingly and putting limits on social interaction to try and keep it at bay while more people are boosted. In England, Boris Johnson, scared of his own backbenchers, has run away and hidden somewhere. We don't even know where he is. And he's not doing a thing. He's just leaving it all up to us. And that, of course, means that more people are going to become sick, some of them very sick, some of them hospitalized, some of them will die. Some of those people, indeed, will be children. Thankfully, a very small proportion still, but apparently more than with Delta or Alpha or the original variant. As you may guess from the way I'm describing this, I am one of those people who's very angry about this.
I mean, okay, I will accept what you're saying, that Boris Johnson is doing this to save his own skin rather than for any reason that is, Boris has always been more concerned about saving Boris than saving us. But that does not mean he isn't doing the right thing. Heaven forbid we have autonomy ourselves to actually look at a variant, which most of the data is now saying is far milder, and actually make our own decisions. This is not a great privilege that we've got on New Year's Eve, Mike. This is a right and our freedom.
It's not a right and a freedom when it puts other people's lives in danger. So, of course, we have the right and the freedom to go out and enjoy ourselves. We don't have the right and freedom to do that when it puts other people's lives in danger.
All right, Benedict.
That's why we have seatbelts. That's why we have drink driving limits. That's why we don't all carry guns around. That's why we don't all carry machetes around. That's why we don't have, firearms in the streets. There are loads of things that, yes, they may be done, but they put other people's lives in danger. We don't
carrying a machete, drink driving, carrying a gun. Benedict, I mean, is that in any way comparable to wanting to go out and have a vodka and tonic on a New Year's Eve?
I mean, Mike needs to spend more time in rural Norfolk. Everybody's packing there. I don't know where he's been hanging out, but we all manage to own guns and not actually commit atrocities all the time. I think it's interesting, isn't it, that when the experts say one thing and the Prime Minister goes with what a certain set of experts say, then as long as it aligns with certain people's ideological outlook, then people are happy to go along with it. But I think one of the major criticisms of Boris Johnson in previous iterations of the pandemic and previous lockdowns is that he was only prepared to listen to one set of experts. Specifically, he was only prepared to listen to experts from epidemiology. There wasn't a lot that went into the thoughts of the education establishment or the economy or anything like that. And that's the thing you have to remember. Society is not just about public health. It is about everything in the round. And you do have to take things like, I'm prepared to accept that there may be more hospitalizations, there may be less, but things have changed. And ultimately, the economy is in a very different place to where it was before. Children's education is in a very difficult place to where it was before. And as we have pointed out, the Conservative Party's popularity is not quite where it is as it was before. And this is the thing. He's unpopular, not because in the past he hasn't been strong enough on the virus. He's actually been pretty strong, as British prime ministers go, on imposing lockdowns and restrictions on people's freedoms. And that hasn't actually necessarily won him a great deal of goodwill long term, so much so that when one scandal comes along and then another minor scandal comes along, his popularity absolutely evaporates. So clearly, that's not the key thing here. I think it's fine of the Prime Minister to have sat down with the experts, with the epidemiological establishment, with the medical establishment, and gone through the facts and figures, and then also look at other aspects, like the economy, like what's happening in the rest of society, and say, do I actually need to make the same set of decisions as last time? Can I justify it? And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, what is this going to do to my ability to govern? Because this is the thing, we're talking about the backbenchers, the Tory backbenchers. They have the ability to scupper all kinds of legislation going forward. They have the ability to cause utter chaos. The Labour Party do too, if they were so inclined, but they aren't at the moment. And, the business of governing the country, I'm afraid it is of slight importance, as much as we might think Boris Johnson isn't very good at it. So if it's a question of maintaining the numbers to make sure that he can get legislation through, I think that's
But I would say, and I'm not putting words into your mouth, Mike, but I would say that, look, when you are in a crisis, a public health crisis, the numbers of the backbenchers and things like that should be the last thing on your mind. Boris should be acting in the interests of the health of the country. And there are many people who I think would legitimately say that he's not doing that. What would you say to that?
Well, I agree with that. And we elect a political party to govern because we trust them to take care of our public health, perhaps before more than anything else. Defence and security probably also top of the list. More than anything else on that list. We don't elect governments thinking they're going to, go against what is happening in all the other nations in the UK and against the other nations of Europe and against Canada, the US. Any comparable nation to us, they're all acting against this virus. Now, whatever you think of the pandemic, whatever you think of Boris Johnson, whoever you voted for last time, whoever you'll vote for next time, we should all, those of us who are in England, be thinking, why is our government taking different action from every comparable government? Is that because they know something and those other governments don't know? Or is it because they're making a huge mistake because they're scared of public opinion, because of the serial crises, which are not minor? I don't think, Benedict, I don't think all the corruption that we've had is remotely minor. I think it's fairly horrific, and I think the public have agreed. But the other point I want to make in light of what Benedict has said, he talks about education, he talks about the economy. We know full well the way to get kids in education and keep them there is to keep cases low. The way to help the economy is to keep cases low. The economy is fully open in England, but I was just reading an article before I came on here talking about the hospitality sector. The hospitality sector is falling apart because we could all see that cases are off the charts and huge numbers of people are not going to hospitality venues. We would be if cases were low.
Isn't there a valid argument to say that isn't there a valid argument to say that the reason that the hospitality numbers are collapsing is because of the narrative coming out of the mouth of people like you, Mike? Cases do not necessarily the dangerous virus. It's that every single report, Imperial College, University of Edinburgh, even the UK Health Security Agency say that it is a significantly milder variant than anything else that we have seen. So cases, if they're not equating to absolutely dramatic hospitalizations on the level that we saw a year ago, which they are not, if they're not equating to a massive increase in deaths, they are not, then they mean nothing.
They do mean a lot because, of course, some people are getting ill, some people are dying. Those numbers will, of course, go up because we're still in the very early days of this variant and we're already seeing hospitalizations and deaths go up. They will almost certainly continue to go up because they track case rates, which have been going up, but of course it feeds through 2 or 3 or even 5 or 6 weeks later in terms of deaths. So we can't say that it's like that. Also, it's not right to say just because it's milder than Delta or Alpha or the original that it is mild. It is still far more dangerous than flu. Had it been the original variant, we would all still have gone to lockdown because it's still a very dangerous virus. It's just a bit less dangerous than Delta or Alpha or the original.
Benedict, okay,
it's mild.
Benedict, we've had on average more people dying on a daily basis of DIY accidents at home than we have of Omicron. I mean, does that justify where we are?
Well, that's just because the British people aren't especially practical. I mean, I just think we hear this, don't we? That people wouldn't be not going to social events and that education wouldn't be threatened if case numbers were being low. You then ask people, well, how would you keep the case numbers low? Or how would we do it? We'd shut down venues, we'd close the schools, we'd stop social interaction. So it is a bit of a vicious circle. If you work in hospitality or you work in education, it's you could stay open if there were fewer cases, and how are we going to keep the cases low? By not letting people interact with each other. It doesn't really work, and this is why I'm afraid people are beginning to lose faith with the Prime Minister, and I think it's ultimately why he's taken this decision, because he himself can see that this vicious circle isn't actually improving the situation, and he's prepared to take the gamble, and I admit it is a gamble, that this variant won't lead to the same levels of hospitalizations and deaths as previous ones have done. Now, if it ends up being a complete catastrophe, he will take the rap for that. But, we will cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm afraid to say, ultimately, if you are in a pandemic, those are the tough sort of decisions you are going to have to make, because people are already beginning to feel the economic impact. People in schools, children in schools, are already beginning to feel the social impact. This is not just something that we can put off indefinitely. These are not things that we can just close every now and then on a whim because cases begin to surge again. You also have to look at other aspects of the NHS. You look at the sheer number of cancer referrals that have been missed, and the increase in other ailments that are affecting people. And it is also wrong to say that other countries are just sort of acting in tandem and that there's been no response. We're seeing unprecedented numbers of protests across the continent from members of the public in countries like Italy and Austria, Germany, France, the Netherlands, everywhere, because these are not universally popular measures, because people can see that it is causing massive
All right.
scarring.
When we come back, we'll continue this conversation.